particularly unique or specific significance related to the cultural, architectural, archaeological, and historical heritage of St. Johns County. Such cultural resources may be designated as landmarks or landmark districts. Applications for landmarks can be initiated by the CRRB, the BCC, the county administrator, or the property owner or owners. Any county resident may make a recommendation for landmark nomination and submit the recommendation to the CRRB for consideration. Ultimately, the property owner must allow the nomination and potential designation. So if any alteration, new construction, relocation, or demolition may affect a county landmark, these projects must be reviewed for its effect on the resource. Property owners with properties designated as county landmarks may apply for incentives such as tax exemptions. St. Johns County currently has 9 properties listed as county landmarks. The landmarks are in both private and public partnership. There are 5 county landmarks owned or managed by the county. 4 of these properties we are proposing for the National Register of Historic Places. So our first county landmark is the Sunnyside Demps House, which is located in New Augustine and was designated in 2001. Thomas F. House, a builder, politician, and customs collector, constructed the Sunnyside Hotel, and as well as several other homes built for prominent West Augustinian families such as the Alexanders, Edgars, and Kinglands. House was from Vermont and spent his winters managing the Sunnyside Hotel and spent his summers at his cottage in Saratoga. If you've seen this 1885 bird's eye view of St. Augustine, you'll notice that the Sunnyside Hotel was located on prime real estate near the middle of the map. In 1887, Henry Flagler purchased the Sunnyside Hotel and other property along King Street and planned to develop the Hotel Ponce de Leon. Flagler divided the Sunnyside Hotel into sections. He moved 2 of the sections into the newly organized New Augustine. One section is believed to have been demolished, but one of the remaining sections was repurposed into a residence. In the 1920s, the Demps family lived in the 2-story home on King Street. Moses Demps Sr. was born around 1882. In 1920, he worked as a gardener in one of St. Augustine's private gardens. Moses Demps Sr. lived in the home with his wife Rosa, their 6 children, and his sister Sally. In the late 1920s, Moses entered the ministry following his brother Abraham Demps' footsteps. He was the pastor of St. James Baptist Church in New Augustine. The Sunnyside Demps House is a designated county landmark thanks to its early history associated with tourism in St. Augustine and is also as a residence to Reverend Demps and his family in New Augustine. Our second designated county landmark is the Inn at Marywood, which is located in northwest St. Johns County and is also known as The Retreat. It was designated in 2014. George H. Hodges Sr. built the home as a country estate for his family in 1939 after acquiring 100 acres along the St. Johns River, which was originally part of Francis Philip Fascio Sr.'s 10,000-acre land grant, which Fascio named New Switzerland. Hodges and his business partner, Alexander Brest, owned an engineering business in Jacksonville known as the Duval Engineering and Contracting Company. Hodges constructed the home out of coquina in the Spanish Mediterranean revival style. The Hodges owned the property until 1958, when he sold it to the Catholic Diocese of St. Augustine under Bishop Joseph P. Hurley who purchased 90 of the 100 acres. Bishop Hurley planned to build a summer camp. The following year, Father Cornelius Doherty ran the camp, known as Camp St. John's. In 1959, the diocese purchased Hodges' remaining property in the area to build a seminary. In the 1960s, Camp St. John housed Cuban refugees. Later, the camp housed an experimental Job Corps program. In 1977, Monsignor Joseph Dawson founded San Juan del Rio Mission and held Mass in their new chapel, which was the converted game room. The historic mansion is the centerpiece of the 100-acre Marywood property. Our third designated county landmark is the Nice House, located at Nice Beachfront Park in the Volano North Beach area. The county landmark was designated in 2015. The home and park, like Nice High School, was named in honor of Alan D. Nice, who was known as a pioneer in Florida's conservation and reforestation efforts. After graduating with a degree in forestry, Nice was hired by the Florida Forestry Service. He later became the state's first county forester. It was said that he planted 55 million pine trees during his career. Nice came to St. Johns County when he was the general manager of Robinson Improvement Company, who owned 15,000 acres of timberland. Nice started and was involved in many local organizations. He started the St. Johns County Timber Growers Association and served as its president for 25 years. He was one of the founders of the St. Johns County Fairgrounds, which was initially purchased for a 4-H program. He served on the board of directors of the State Cattlemen's Association, was a member of the Society of American Foresters, and was a former director of the Florida Forestry Association. He also served on the Board of County Commissioners and on the St. Johns County School Board, where he served as its chairman for 10 years. After researching the Osceola capture site, which will be discussed later, I found out that he helped facilitate the acquisition by the county of 2 important historic sites, the Fort Payton site and the Osceola capture site. Nice built his home in 1951 with the help of architect Raleigh Pert. The home was built in the Florida vernacular style and reflects Nice's respect for the Florida environment. He constructed the home almost entirely with native hardwoods. The exterior of the home was built with cypress board and batten and was said to have never been touched by paint, stain, or varnish. The interior boasts 12-inch bald cypress wall planking, heart pine floors, and native hardwood ceiling planking with solid bald cypress ceiling beams in the living room. Nice chose the materials specifically for their longevity in Florida's coastal environment. Nice timbered the materials from his own property and planed the wood at Barnes's sawmill in Spuds. Local mason artisans built the brick fireplace. In the early 2000s, the county was able to purchase the Nice property from Nice's daughter, Marguerite Stevens, through Florida Communities Trust, or FCT funding. The county will be proposing the site for consideration in the National Register of Historic Places. At this time, the State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO, has not evaluated the resource, so we will request an evaluation. Our fourth designated county landmark is Alpine Groves, which is located in northwest St. Johns County. It was designated a county landmark in 2015. This may sound familiar, but the Alpine Groves property was part of Francis Philip Fascio Sr.'s 10,000-acre St. Johns River land grant. Fascio moved to the area around 1774 and lived on the property until his death in 1811. After his death, his son, Francis Philip Fascio Jr., inherited the property. Fascio Jr. owned the property through some of the early years of the Seminole Wars, and he and his family were driven out of the area by Indian attacks. In 1821, when the United States took control of East and West Florida, Fascio Jr. returned to New Switzerland and rebuilt the homes and had a thriving orange grove. He spent several years submitting claims for the family's property. Fascio Jr. died in 1831, and the claims were finally confirmed later that year. Upon his death, his children inherited the property, including Louisa Fascio. Louisa Fascio may be more known for her ownership of a boarding house in downtown St. Augustine. She sold several parcels of her St. Johns River property to help cover her living expenses. Louisa sold 175 acres to J.W. Black, which included the Alpine Groves property. Mr. Black submitted a map of his property to the St. Johns County Clerk of Court, which is presented on the left. Black had a house on the property at the time of his death in 1879, but the structure no longer exists. Black sold the property to Mr. Holt, an Englishman and secretary of the Independent Steamer Company. Mr. Holt purchased the property as a real estate investment and made improvements on the land. The map on the right shows the property and some surrounding properties in 1880, and it was recorded as the Scott subdivision. Robert Willis bought out his brother, Holt sold the property to John and Robert Willis in 1884. The Willises were farmers from Missouri. Robert Willis bought out his brother, and we believe it was Robert who built the farmhouse on the property as his seasonal home. The Alpine Groves property represents a 19th century historic farmstead that includes the farmhouse circa 1886, a contemporaneous orange packing barn, a well, and a reconstructed horse stable. There is also a 1930 structure which the previous owners called the museum. The county was able to purchase the property from Mrs. Ruth Harris Bennett through FCT funding in 2000. Mrs. Bennett's parents, John and Ruth Harris, purchased the property in 1937. St. Johns County has received several Division of Historical Resources special category grants for the property over the last 20 years. With grant funding, we have been able to reconstruct the horse barn, shore up the foundation of the farmhouse and add ADA access, and most recently, we've completed a grant to rehabilitate the interior of the structure. The Friends of Alpine Groves plan to furnish the farmhouse in the near future. The county will be proposing this resource group for consideration in the National Register of Historic Places. At this time, SHPO has not evaluated this resource, so we will be requesting an evaluation. Our fifth county landmark is William Stetson Kennedy's former home, known as Beluthahatchee, which is located in northwest St. Johns County. It was designated in 2015. William Stetson Kennedy was born in Jacksonville. He left college to join the Federal Writers Project of the Works Progress Administration as an oral historian, collecting folk stories throughout Florida. His first book, Palmetto Country, summarized these stories. During his time with the WPA, he worked with Zora Neale Hurston and Alan Lomax. During World War II, Kennedy covertly joined the Ku Klux Klan as well as the Columbians, a new fascist organization. He helped federal agents expose the Klan in the 1940s and the 1950s. In 1948, he obtained a small parcel of land from his father, which he called Beluthahatchee, a mythical place where all unpleasantness is forgiven and forgotten. Kennedy attributed the name to Zora Neale Hurston and stated that Beluthahatchee was a Florida Shangri-La. The Kennedy property originally constituted 70 acres fronting the William Bartram Scenic Highway, bounded by Roberts Road on the north, Beluthahatchee Road on the east, and Rain Cow Drive on the south. In 1945, Kennedy's father impounded Mill Creek, forming Lake Beluthahatchee and forming a subdivision around the lake where the homes had restrictive covenants, setting it aside in perpetuity as a wildlife refuge, and that the residential construction be consistent with the development's goal of serving as a working demonstration that human habitat need not be mutually exclusive, but can coexist in harmony. In 1975, Kennedy built the cabin at Beluthahatchee, which he ordered from the Lindell Cedar Home Catalog. The closest plans that resemble the cabin are those associated with the Chalet Vale. Beluthahatchee is a two-time literary landmark. One of Kennedy's frequent guests was Woody Guthrie, who wrote his autobiography, Seeds of Men, and 80 songs while he was in residence at Beluthahatchee. In 2003, Beluthahatchee became a literary landmark because of its association with Woody Guthrie. After Kennedy's death, Beluthahatchee became a literary landmark for the second time due to its association with Kennedy. In the early 2000s, the county was able to purchase the property through FCT funds. Our sixth county landmark is the Hartley Store, located in Northwest St. Johns County, which was designated in 2015. William Steele moved to the Switzerland area in the late 1800s. In the early 1900s, he ran one of the first public stores and post offices in Switzerland, which was located near the fire station just across the road from Alpine Groves. In 1924, the store burned down, and later the Brooker family took over the business. In 1899, Robert Ellis Brooker and his wife, Julia Church, purchased the property that included the Alpine Groves farmhouse. Mr. Brooker was from Green Cove Springs, and Mrs. Brooker, Julia, was from a local family, one of the daughters of John Seth Church. In the 1920s, Brooker built the bungalow structure on the left that faces modern-day State Road 13. In 1924, the Brookers built a small store just outside or just adjacent to the property, which they called Ward's Grocery, and which was known as the Hartley Store at the time of landmarking. Julia Brooker was the Switzerland postmaster. In 1945, the Brookers sold the store to the Hartleys and built the small structure shown on the right, where Julia continued to maintain her small post office. Leonard and Evelyn Hartley moved to Switzerland from Duval County. They ran the store in the front of the building and lived in the back of the store for many years, before buying the adjacent property also owned by the Brookers. The store is still under private ownership, but last time I stopped by, it was called Adams Heritage Market, and it appeared to be closed. During a previous visit, they had the county landmark plaque displayed near the front entrance. Our seventh county landmark is the Moultrie Church and Wildwood Cemetery, located in Moultrie in central St. Johns County. The church was listed in the National Register of Historic Places in 2014 and designated a county landmark in 2019. The church dates to 1877 and is an example of a rural one-room church with a gable-roofed portico with a pediment that marks the main entry. The church has a rectangular enclosed belfry topped with a four-sided steeple located at the peak of the roof near the western entry. These features help identify the frame vernacular building as a church and is similar to other small, historic rural churches throughout Florida. This church was built as a meeting house for the Moultrie community in keeping with early Methodist traditions. Wilma Davis painted the window on the east side of the church, shown on the right. She was the first ordained deacon in the Florida Conference of the Methodist Episcopal Church. A member of the St. Augustine Genealogical Society, C. Mac Wills, compiled and organized records related to the Moultrie Cemetery. Henry O. Barnum is the earliest legible grave, which dates to 1880. The other names in the cemetery include Hagen, Armstrong, Barnes, Cubbage, Genung, and Osteen, which represent historic families in the Moultrie and St. Augustine communities. In 2004, Environmental Services Incorporated, ESI, conducted a survey of 46 historical cemeteries in St. Johns County. ESI recommended that the cemetery was eligible for local landmark designation and should be considered in conjunction with the church. At the time of the survey, the cemetery had several early signed gravestones, wooden markers, and shell grave goods that are important to the interpretation of burial practices in St. Johns County. Our land development code states that the CRRB should pursue county landmark designation for all properties listed on the National Register of Historic Places. There are 3 properties in unincorporated St. Johns County that are privately owned and listed in the National Register. The CRRB directed me to write letters to the property owners to gauge their interest in pursuing county landmark designation. The Hagen family, who own and manage the Moultrie Church and Wildwood Cemetery, responded with their interest, and we moved forward with the county landmark application and submission to the CRRB. The CRRB recommended the church and the cemetery for designation as a county landmark, and the BCC unanimously approved the designation. Our 8th county landmark is the Dixie Highway, which was completed in 1916 and designated in the National Register of Historic Places in 2005. It was designated as a county landmark in 2019. In the early 20th century, St. Johns County implemented a county-wide highway improvement program. The Dixie Highway was a part of a larger highway system that connected Chicago, Illinois, and Michigan to Miami, Florida. Henry Flagler complained that the neglected roads in the area would deter businesses away from here. St. Augustine businessmen and politicians wanted to build a brick highway to service the entire area, and they pointed out that brick-paved streets were fairly maintenance-free. The county decided to continue paving the roads with oyster shells. However, in late 1913, the BCC found out that a brick road was in construction in Duval County from the Nassau County line to the St. Johns County line. In 1914, Volusia County also discussed the benefits of concrete and brick streets. Later that year, St. Johns County's BCC advertised bids for 64 miles of roadway, paving the John Anderson Highway from the Duval County line to the north city limit of St. Augustine and along the county road from Hastings to Volusia County. The BCC awarded the J.B. McCrary Engineering Company the contract to design the highway and the Wilson Construction Company to construct the highway. The Graves Brick Company from Alabama and the Southern Clay Manufacturing Company out of Tennessee made the bricks. Each mile of roadbed contains approximately 237,600 bricks. The brick roadbed is flanked by concrete curbs. The curbs contain pebbles and chips. Wilson Construction Company created grooves at the end of each section that interlock with the adjoining sections, which protects the road from erosion and prevents from separation from the curbs. The road is 9 feet wide. The Wilson Company began laying the curb and brick at Durban and in Hastings in late 1914. The project was completed in 1916. The bricks in the remaining section were brought to the area by mules who carried the bricks from the railroad tracks to this rural area of the county. In 1915, a delegation of St. Augustine businessmen joined the Dixie Highway motorcade, which was a procession of 75 automobiles traveling from Chicago to Miami Beach. The St. Augustinians joined the procession at the Duval-St. Johns County line and escorted them along the Dixie Highway into St. Augustine. Later that day, 40 cars left St. Augustine, headed to Daytona Beach along the brick-paved highway. The automobiles were adorned with flags and bunting. Residents of Elkton and Hastings joined in the celebration as the motorcade passed through downtown Hastings. The Dixie Highway is an excellent example of a rural brick highway. It maintains a high level of integrity and is still maintained as a road in its original rural setting. By the mid-1920s, Florida contained the 3rd largest concentration of rural brick highways in the nation. There are now less than 50 miles remaining, and this 10-mile section extending from southern St. Johns County into Flagler County is the longest known contiguous section of this type of rural highway. The BCC unanimously approved the Dixie Highway as a county landmark in 2019. Our most recent county landmark is the Old Hastings Jail. A local resident, Sheila Greenleaf, brought the historic significance of the property to the county's attention and prepared the county landmark application. The building belonged to the town of Hastings and became St. Johns County property after the town's dissolution. The jail was constructed in 1911 and replaced a wooden jail that was destroyed by fire when a prisoner made his escape by burning his way out of the building. It provided a satellite location for the county jail in Hastings, since the jail in St. Augustine was 19 miles away. It also represents an association with early rural law enforcement in St. Johns County. In 1910, Hastings had a thriving population of around 1,200 people with a strong migrant population. The town included numerous stores and businesses, a bank, a hotel, and saloons. In addition to farming, there were 2 barrel manufacturing companies and a grist mill. The town government enacted local ordinances, and a constable or marshal was tasked with enforcing the ordinances. A justice of the peace heard the cases. Prisoners being taken to the county jail were taken by train, wagon, or carriage. Those held for lesser offenses were held at the Hastings jail. Charles E. Green was a native of Hastings, Florida. He was a deputy sheriff under Sheriff Joe Perry and became the constable or marshal of the town of Hastings in the 11th District of Florida. He served in the position for around 11 years. His brother Archie Green and Archie's 2 sons, Arliss and Merrill, were also Hastings constables. Gambling, drunkenness, fights, and theft were some of the frequent offenses. BCC unanimously approved the Hastings jail as a county landmark earlier this year. A local builder from Palatka built the structure. The building is constructed with textured concrete block, which was used in the early 20th century because of its low cost, sound absorption, and energy efficiency. The stone is also naturally fire and termite resistant. The structure has a metal roof and star-shaped anchor plates below the eaves. There are 5 windows and 4 still have bars. There's 1 entrance with a solid door, a glass door, and an iron barred cell door. Other examples of the stone can be found at the Christ United Methodist Church at 200 East Ladden Street in Hastings, the Bethel AME Church in Palatka, and several homes on Old Mission Avenue and Cincinnati Avenue in St. Augustine. The county is submitting the Osceola capture site to the SHPO for consideration for listing in the National Register of Historic Places. The first step is to submit a preliminary site information questionnaire, or PSIQ, to SHPO to request confirmation of the site's eligibility. If SHPO confirms that the site is eligible, we would move forward with an application for the National Register. The site commemorates the location of the capture of Osceola. In 1837, this unassuming spot off Wildwood Drive was the location of a dark event in St. Johns County history. Historian John Mahon called the capture of Osceola the most notorious treachery of the Second Seminole War. Osceola and a group of around 80 people arrived in St. Augustine to meet with representatives to begin peace negotiations. At that time, General Thomas S. Jessup was the commander of Fort Payton, then known as Fort Moultrie. He ordered General Joseph Hernandez of the Florida militia to capture Osceola and Coahuila under a flag of truce. Hernandez arranged council near Fort Payton, which was a log fort erected on Moultrie Creek, garrisoned by the 2nd Dragoons. On October 21st, Hernandez marched from St. Augustine to Fort Payton, where he picked up some of the soldiers. His force consisted of two companies of 250 Florida mounted men and dragoons. Brevet Major James A. Ashby's 2nd Dragoons were close by with an attachment and would appear once the signal was given. Jessup, nervous of the outcome, stayed at Fort Payton. Hernandez had no trouble finding the natives because they camped under the white flag of truce made of materials that Hernandez had provided them. An eyewitness stated that Osceola became so choked up that he asked Coahajo to speak for the Seminoles. Hernandez asked Blue Snake to relay the Army's message to surrender. Blue Snake balked because he believed that the negotiators were to have been allowed to go free. At this point, Hernandez gave the prearranged signal for the surrounding troops to close in. Although the Seminoles carried guns, they provided no resistance. Susan Parker wrote that an Army physician, Captain Nathan S. Jarvis, accompanied General Hernandez to the meeting and wrote about the meeting in his journal. He wrote, General Joseph Hernandez set out to hold a talk in what was pretty well known before to take him and his party. Wishing to see and hear the talk, I accompanied the general and his staff. Parker stated that someone pointed out Osceola to Dr. Jarvis, but he wrote that he could tell he was a principled man based on his demeanor, to which he wrote, nothing of savage fierceness or determination marked his countenance. On the contrary, his features indicated mildness and benevolence. A continuous smile played over his face, particularly when shaking hands with the officers present. Coahajo was the spokesperson for the natives. General Hernandez had asked the others where were the others, since the group was much smaller than anticipated. Coahajo stated that the others got the measles and were unable to attend. When discussing the actual moment of capture, Dr. Jarvis wrote that he had closely watched the faces of Osceola and the others and saw no trace of surprise. In all, the U.S. Army captured Osceola, Coahajo, 71 warriors, 2 women, and 4 Indian Negroes, plus 42 rifles. The captives were marched to St. Augustine, which they reached at sundown. They were imprisoned at the Castillo de San Marcos, then known as Fort Marion. A few months after the capture event, several of the Seminoles, including Coahajo, were able to escape. Osceola was very ill and unable to escape at the time. Because of the Seminole escape, Osceola was transferred to Fort Moultrie in South Carolina, where he died soon after the transfer. His body is buried at the fort, but his head was taken soon after his death. General Jessup spent the rest of his life attempting to explain his reasoning for the treachery. In 1896, the St. Augustine Historical Society marked the location with a wooden marker hung between 2 trees. John Masters, a witness of the capture event, led the Historical Society to the location. Other documentation at the Historical Society stated that besides Masters, the properties in the area remained in the same families and that the property owners also confirmed the marked site was the location of the event. Masters allegedly made a comment that the only thing missing was the log on which Osceola and General Hernandez sat. The location is described as 2 musket shots south of Fort Payton. In 1916, St. Augustine Historical Society marked the location with a coquina monument. In 1957, X.L. Palliser, the president of the Historical Society, wrote a letter to the BCC calling attention to the historical significance of the Old Kings Road, Fort Payton, and the Osceola capture site. He suggested that the Old Kings Road should be preserved and marked. The BCC directed the clerk to write the landowners along the route and enclose his letter. In the 1960s, Alan Neese helped with efforts to have Rainier donate the land where the Osceola capture site was located to the St. Johns County Historical Commission. J. Carver Harris, the chairman of the commission, contacted the property owners where the Treaty of Moultrie Creek marker and the Fort Payton site were located and noted that Rainier had shown interest in cooperating with the commission to protect these sites and open the Kings Road to the public. In 1967, Rainier deeded the Fort Payton property and the Osceola capture site, as well as an easement connecting the 2 sites to the county. In 1967, the Historical Commission installed a bronze historical marker at a wayside park just east of the capture site, but this marker was eventually stolen. In 2006, a cultural resources assessment survey was conducted in the vicinity. As a result, SHPO recommended that the site is eligible or potentially eligible for the National Register of Historic Places, so we will be requesting confirmation of this determination. The county will also be proposing the Old Spanish Chimney and Well as a site for the National Register of Historic Places by submitting a PSIQ to DHR. In 1990, Marcia Chance, during an FDOT project, stated that the Historic St. Augustine Preservation Board and St. Augustine Historical Society believed the chimney dated to 1671 and that Alonso Diaz Mejia, owner of the Coquina Quarry, constructed the chimney. They also believed that Mejia likely built living quarters for himself and for the quarry workers, but there are no known Spanish records confirming this. John Goggin and Milton Bacon found artifacts in the area that would indicate a Spanish habitation. Chance stated that the site is worthy of further historic and archaeological study. She also noted that the well was not typical of known 17th century wells in St. Augustine. As a result of the archaeological survey, SHPO determined that the site was eligible, so we will be requesting confirmation of this eligibility. Susan Parker has conducted additional research on the Old Spanish Chimney. In 2015, she wrote in an article for the St. Augustine Record that stated, "A bolt of lightning hit the house of the quarry foreman on Anastasia Island in late June 1802. The Coquina chimney that stands in the little county park on Old Beach Road is probably a survivor of the damage caused by the lightning strike." The 1924 subdivision plat for Menendez Park includes the well and old chimney in two small parks on either side of Atlantic Boulevard, basically modern day Old Beach Road. The well and chimney are now located on the same property. In 1960, Louis R. Arana, chief of the history division of the Historical Society, and J.T. Van Kampen, chairman of the St. Johns County Historical Commission, called attention to the old well and chimney and suggested that the road be relocated to preserve and protect these historical markers. The BCC authorized the change in the road. In 1916, Milton E. Bacon, the chairman of the Historical Commission, asked the county to assist in repairing, restoring, and protecting the Old Spanish Chimney. Commissioner Michler noted that the chimney is located in a little park and recommended that the county develop the park. The chairman requested that Commissioner Michler work with the county engineer to investigate the costs and report back to the board. In 1970, Commissioner Green drew attention to the request from the Historical Society to put a fence around the old chimney. Commissioner Michler stated that a survey had been made of the property and then that the next step was to clear and hard surface the land around it. In 1971, J. Carver Harris from the Historical Commission urged the board to take immediate steps to repair the chimney and well on Anastasia Island because vandals continued to destroy the landmarks, and suggested that the area should be fenced and landscaped. In 1972, plans were made with the state's Department of Natural Resources to create the park. In 1975, the St. Johns County Historical Commission, in cooperation with the Department of State, installed the historical marker at the site. So that completes my discussion on our county landmarks and our proposed sites for the National Register of Historic Places. And I can take questions if there are any questions.
If there are any questions, I can just use that chat feature on the bottom.
What does the chat feature look like?
It looks like a.
Oh, I see it.
You got it?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I tried to type a question, but I'm just going to ask it. Are you going to be writing these National Register nominations, or will that be put out to consultants, or how will it be handled?
It's my understanding that I will be writing it with the help of the state people. So they provide a lot of the help for certified local governments is what they've told me.
Okay. Well, you have no questions. So Don, shall we close out the meeting?
Yeah, if we're done, we can end now. And I just want to say you did a great job, Mercedes.
Thank
And it
you.
is recorded. We'll have this on the link on Facebook and the website. It'll be on YouTube shortly for the people.
It
who
was
missed
very interesting.
Sorry
Thank you.
again for my technical difficulties.
You
Don
did
and I
great.
ran through it and everything, and I still had technical difficulties. So
That's all right. You did good.
Thank
Okay, we're
you.
gonna end it then, Marcia? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good night,
everybody.
everybody.
Good night.